Okay. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started. I keep forgetting to remember to look up at the camera instead of straight into the abyss. Anyway, so welcome back for another Friday sit, informal Men's Meditation Academy. We'll be doing a 30-minute sit, Vipassana style insight meditation. And then after that, have a short talk and a chance for any question and answers about your practice. And that will be it. Will be a wrap for today. So let's get started. Hopefully you can see and hear me. If you can't, you can just put something in the chat. But I'm going to be meditating with you, so I'm not probably going to see most of any messages you might send me. So let's just start with getting our seat. Okay, hold on one second. Just checking here. Make sure. Great. Okay, sounds like everything is working. So let's take our seat. So this is always important every time we come to practice. When we do insight meditation, we don't just sit down and fall asleep, although our mind might want to do that. We take a seat. We take our posture. We feel the sitting bones on the cushion. We make any adjustments that we need to, so that once we start, we move the body as few times as humanly possible. So if you move it, 5 or 6 times today, then next week try and move it 3 or 4 times. So just keep moving less is the goal, because the stillness of the body allows the mind to concentrate and focus, and also helps the mind settle so it's not as agitated. So let's try and make sure that we're just taking any movements now as we find our posture that help us settle in. I would always ask that when you start meditation, you start in a comfortable posture where you're alert but relaxed. So if you start and you're already in pain or discomfort because you've chosen a posture that's just too tight, too rigid, that's not going to work. Find a posture that you're comfortable in and that you can stay alert. So sitting posture, in a chair, on a cushion. We don't lie down because we usually will fall asleep. So if you want, you can even try this meditation standing. That's a long time to stand. But if you're struggling staying awake, that's one thing that we can do. We stand up and we just meditate with our eyes closed. But today, as you can see, I'm just going to be doing seated posture, finding that seated comfort and just settling in. Okay, and so once you're settled in, we're not going to have our eyes open. We're going to close the eyes, gently close the eyes, and coming to the breath. So gently closing the eyes, coming to the breath. The breath is the anchor. The breath is always available whenever we get lost, confused, distracted, feeling overwhelmed. Whatever happens, if you do nothing else, return to the anchor of the breath. The anchor of the breath below the nostrils, above the upper lip. The inhale and the exhale. A natural breath. So we're not controlling the breath. This isn't pranayama. It's not controlled breathing. It's just a natural breath. And that means however you're breathing right now, whatever it looks like today at this moment. But the awareness is there. The awareness is connecting with the breath. Noticing as it comes in, noticing it as it goes out. Feeling the sensation and the movement of the breath. Not intellectualizing, not counting breaths, but actually experiencing, connecting and sustaining the attention as the breath goes out, as it comes back in. So just taking these first few minutes to arrive, to settle into your posture, and to connect with your breath. And also to check your attitude. Your attitude for meditation should be relaxed alertness. Intention means that we're here for the next 30 minutes, not spacing out, but intentionally witnessing our reality as it is. Intentionally noticing all the different phenomena, all the different forms of perception, like sound, arising, changing, and passing away. Arising, changing, and passing away. Continuously noticing, that is the intention we have set for the next 30 minutes. Continuously coming back to the present moment. Witnessing, experiencing what is happening right now in this moment. From moment to moment to moment. This is the intention. Setting this intention helps the mind recognize what its practice is right now. Witnessing our reality as it is, taking curiosity, taking an interest in all the different forms of perception that arise in the field of awareness. Whatever is predominant, your attention is likely to go to whatever is predominant. Let that be the object of meditation momentarily, noticing it, observing it as it changes, as it passes away. Maybe something else more dominant comes into your awareness, and the mind moves to the next object. And like this, from moment to moment, the mind keeps shifting, keeps moving its awareness from one predominant object to another. There's no preference. There's no craving or creating a particular experience. There's no pushing away or rejecting a particular emotion or feeling. There's just noticing things as they are in this moment. And if aversion arises, disliking arises, resistance arises, then notice that. See if you can relax into the resistance. See if you can acknowledge the disliking, accepting it, allowing it. This is how it is right now. I am disliking, I am resisting my experience, some aspect of my experience. Similarly, the mind might be craving a particular sensation or sound, looking for it, trying to hang on, hold on to a particular experience you're having of bliss, of lightness, of peace, of samadhi, concentration. Noticing that, noticing the desire, the craving, relaxing into that, noticing its nature as it changes. So whatever is happening, good or bad or neutral, the awareness, the mind, and the intention are present, connected, and sustained over the course of the next 30 minutes, from moment to moment. Keep returning to your experience as it is. as it is, not as you would like it to be, but as it is. Allowing whatever arises, observing it, and letting it pass away. This is the simple practice of vipassana, of insight meditation. No need to complicate it. Keep it simple, as it is, from moment to moment, as it is. Whenever you notice the mind has wandered, drifted off, spacing out, caught up in some narrative, some story, wherever it's gone, just gently bring it back, resting in the present moment as it is, noticing the different objects of meditation, different perceptions as they arise, stay for a while and then pass away, bringing some interest, some curiosity to your experience. Continue to notice as it changes from moment to moment. Where the mind is, follow. No ignorance, no spacing out, just noticing where the mind is from moment to moment, what it's noticing, how it's reacting. Maybe an emotion has come up, a feeling tone, a background sense. Just noticing all the different aspects, both in the foreground and in the background of your awareness, of your experience, the experience of yourself, coming into being from moment to moment, perception, changing. Everything's changing. Keep noticing these shifts as they happen, arising and passing away. Noticing whatever's predominant in the field of awareness. Meditation is not about doing as much as it's about being, witnessing, noticing, practicing, just sitting back in your awareness. Let experience come to you. Let life, reality, as it is, let that do the doing. Just existing. There's a constant state of change, of arising, of staying for a while and then passing away. As we meditate, we just observe reality as it moves along from moment to moment without any effort other than to notice it, other than to be aware of it as it changes. Let the sounds, sensations come to you, not reaching out with our awareness or our attention to try and hear something, but sitting back and let hearing, feeling, all of these different forms of perception are not outside us, letting them come to you, sitting back, just being in your awareness, just being in your aliveness, just being alive, feeling all the changes that are occurring from moment to moment without having to do or go anywhere. Just witnessing the constant movement, dance of life from moment to moment as it is. As it is. Not as you would like it to be, but just as it is. Not creating something, not pushing something away, but just noticing. Noticing our reactions, noticing our experience as it is. Every so often, Check in with your awareness. Where is it? What is it noticing? Refresh your attention, reboot your attention so that you're back to the present moment, noticing whatever's predominant in the field of awareness. Noticing as it arises, its inception, coming out of nowhere. Noticing how it shifts and changes in the field of awareness as you notice it from moment to moment. And then noticing as things pass away, dissolve back into emptiness. Just noticing this pattern, this process from moment to moment without intellectualizing, but through direct experience, connecting with your experience and sustaining your attention over the course from moment to moment as things change. You can watch the whole cycle of birth, life, and death. Each phenomena, each perception, coming and going. And just resting in that. these last couple of minutes, refresh your attention, connecting with your experience, sustaining and noticing from moment to moment as things arise, stay for a while and pass away. Relaxing into your experience, even the things that you don't like. See if you can observe them, allow them non-judgmentally, watching them as they change, letting them go. As you begin to transition out of the meditation, begin to deepen and lengthen your inhale and your exhale. Now changing from an uncontrolled, natural breath to a controlled, intentional, long inhale, long exhale. Releasing on the exhale any tension that may have built up in the mind and the body. Beginning to wiggle the fingers and the toes, waking up the body very slowly. And then slowly transitioning to taking bigger movements, whatever movement that you need, but doing so mindfully. And also noticing the changing sensation in the body as you move, and maybe the changing feeling in the mind, a sense of relief, a sense of letting go, relaxing, or maybe a sense of regret. The meditation is over. Whatever comes up, just noticing that as we start to move again. Move the body. Stretching out the legs if you haven't already. Stretching out the arms. Opening the eyes. And slowly coming back into the room with your all the visual stimulus wherever you are. It's incredible how the colors can be a bit brighter, a little more intensity and vividness in the vision field as you open the eyes. And just the aftermath of the sensations in the body. And just relaxing into all of that. Maybe taking a sip of water. Maybe going to the washroom if you need to. And yeah, I'm going to start with the talk pretty soon. It'll be a short talk. And any questions that you may have that came up during your practice today or over the last week, feel free to type those into the question and answer. There's a little button at the bottom that says Q&A of your Zoom app. It says Q&A, and you can just type in your question there. And for whatever reason, if you can't find that, then as a backup, I guess you could just put it in the chat. So, let's start. And take your seat again or get comfortable. So today's talk, again, this is just a short talk based on some research that I was reading about and also based on my own teacher who had been talking about this earlier this week that inspired me to want to discuss it as well in our Men's Meditation Academy. One of the things that I say sometimes when we're meditating comes from this great little booklet from a master teacher. Very simple. What is the right attitude for meditation? And attitude is a big part of meditation, and it took me a long time as a meditator probably to recognize that. In my own practice, I was so focused on practicing, I never really checked in with my attitude. I never checked in with how I approached my meditation. Every day I would sit, I wouldn't necessarily kind of scan and check in and say, well, what's my attitude today? Do I feel resistance? Am I annoyed? Am I frustrated? Sometimes your attitude can seem like an emotion or just an emotional overlay, kind of in the background sense. You know, what's my attitude? How do I feel about it? What am I trying to get out of this? Or what am I trying to avoid? And so, you know, one of the things that comes up a lot that I like when I'm reading from this is meditation is not trying to experience something you have read or heard about. Don't try to create anything and don't reject what is happening. So that's what I'm saying over and over. Don't try and create something. Don't try and reject it. Just notice what is happening. Just be aware. And so thinking of that, I came across, like I said, from this talk that my teacher was giving, I came across this article about leaning into negative emotions. Leaning into negative emotions, something that doesn't come naturally to most of us, certainly doesn't come naturally to me. And I thought about how this relates to the practice that we're doing each week and hopefully every day. And I thought that one of the reasons most people stop meditating is because they misunderstand what we're doing, what the purpose of all of this is. And because of a lot of the, I would say, a lot of the media and the misinformation, the erroneous understanding of what mindfulness meditation is or insight meditation is, we have to recognize that it's not about creating a peaceful state. It's not a relaxation meditation. Because if it was, it would only be good in this secure, protected, and perfectly tuned environment that we create for ourselves sometimes where we meditate, you know, in a nice spot often we'll pick that's quiet and secure and have our cushions around and all these things if we're lucky. And that's exactly what I tell people to do, because you want to make it as, I guess, enjoyable or as inviting is the word as possible. But once you sit and you begin, then everything is up for grabs. You know, you might sit and have what we call the worst meditation of your life, which basically, in a nutshell, means we're having a meditation that we didn't want. We're having experiences that we don't want, things that we would prefer to reject, avoid, hide from, suppress, run away from. And these things can come up in our meditation. There's no way to escape them. There's no way to escape. The wisdom of no escape was one of the most profound teachings from one of my teachers who's long passed away. But the wisdom of no escape is that there's nowhere to go. This is your reality. I mean, we can try and make things hotter or colder. We can try and escape for a time. We can avoid things for a time. And that might even be healthy when you really just need to give yourself a break from the intensity of your own life. But as a strategy for living, the art of living, if avoidance is your go-to, you're going to run into all kinds of problems. And I see this particularly because in my medical specialty as an addiction physician, I was working in addictions and seeing all the different ways that people were running away from pain, including the pain of their own addiction, not even the original trauma that led to them wanting to escape, but now the actual pain and suffering of the dependence on whatever it is that they're using. And so there was no way to cure anyone or to help anyone in a state of addiction that was unwilling to face their reality as it is. And that's why we have a pandemic, not of COVID-19 anymore, which is now being, the classification is being lowered, I think, to an endemic. Now the pandemic, which has never gone away, is the pandemic of addiction. The need to use substances or experiences or whatever it is to escape. And that we focus so much on escaping that it becomes incredibly unhealthy and imbalanced. Because we realize that sure, what we start to use just every so often to escape, because there's so much pain and suffering and unpleasantness in our life, we're constantly rushing back to that thing that gives us relief, and we become dependent. We become completely dependent on it. And that dependency has its own dangers, its own side effects, its own diseases. So it's a loop that always ends badly. There's no way to follow addiction and really come out the other side unless something changes, your relationship changes. And it's not as much your relationship to the drug or the behavior that changes. Yeah, there's a degree of that, absolutely. But as we know now, it's not the drug that's good or bad, but the relationship to it, the dose of it, the frequency of it. One thing that could be poisonous at a different level could be healing, could be curing. So it's the relationship to our experience that we're always trying to escape. So when I read this article about leaning into negative emotion, I thought this sounds interesting, because this is what we are doing every time we practice. Sometimes we do it better, sometimes we do it worse, sometimes we don't. I don't know, we don't do it at all. We don't even know. We just space out for the whole 30 minutes. But if you're practicing with the right attitude, with the intention of being with your reality as it is, with being with your experience as it is, there is no way to escape negative feelings, negative emotions. There is no escape. So if we're sitting with that intention and we're sitting with that attitude, then the practice brings us face to face with everything that we may have been avoiding, running away from, had suppressed, had forgotten, had dissociated from. All of those defense mechanisms, which again serve a purpose at a time, for a time in our lives. So I'm not judging those. I'm just saying that it's always about the balance. It's always this dynamic tension between too much, too little. So when we sit, we come face to face with these things. And one of those things are negative feelings, negative emotions that come up. Things like depression, feelings of depression, sadness, fear, anger, irritation, frustration. These things come up and we sit with them. And as best we can, we find that place where we're, this is the word, accepting. But accepting, as my teacher pointed out, can be a little bit of a loaded word, acceptance, like we're giving up, like we surrender. And some of you might find that a good word. It helps you relax. It helps you just receive. But another word that has been used is allowing. You don't have to like these sensations, these feelings. You don't have to like them. We're not bullshitting ourselves. We're running away from bullshit. We don't have to like the experience, but we're allowing it, because the alternative of avoiding it causes more suffering. Ultimately leads to more suffering. The constant escape leads to more suffering. That is the disease of addiction. So here we are recognizing, yes, there is suffering. Yes, there is unpleasantness. Here are these negative emotions, feelings. But I am intentionally going to sit with them as long as I can, as best as I can today, and experience them from moment to moment. Learn something about them. So in this research, I thought this is incredibly applicable to what we're doing when we sit. And they talk about in the research, and I'll just say the name of this was Judging Emotions as Good or Bad. Individual differences and their association with psychological health. So judging emotions good or bad. When we're sitting in meditation, we're constantly, I don't know if you've noticed this, for me I notice this, I'm judging things, I like this, I don't like this. And I might not say it in words, it's just like intense. My body tenses up. There's this sense of resistance when there's a pain. When there's bliss or peacefulness or concentration or like ambient sounds that I love, like birds or whatever, then all of a sudden it's like I relax. It's like, oh, this is good. This, I like this. I'm open up for it. Then something happens I don't like. I close up, I tense up. So this constant judgment, this constant moving between reaction and receiving, back and forth. So in this research, they looked at this. Now, they weren't talking about meditation or meditators, but it's absolutely applicable. I almost think that some of the scientists that were in this must have been meditating. But it shows that how we judge and how we react to our negative emotions may affect us more than the actual emotion. So it's the secondary process. It's a secondary suffering. Okay, so it's like an emotion comes up, say anger, but the actual chemical reaction, the actual physiological experience, if we don't add anything to it, anger or sadness or anxiety, these things can come up and last for, I think they did research, something like 90 seconds to a few minutes. If we don't add anything to them, they come up, do their thing, and then pass away. This is what the teaching, right? We're watching this. Arise, do their little dance, and then eventually dissolve. No emotion comes up and just hangs on forever unless we are doing a good job of feeding into it. And so this is where they're talking about the negative emotions that affect us the most are the ones that come up from our judgment. So when we have the emotion and then we go to I like it or I dislike it, that then creates a second wave. And that's the wave that really changes our psychological habit and health over time. So it makes sense that what they're saying is lean into negative emotion, as in you don't have to like these negative emotions, but the research shows that if you even have a more neutral relationship to them when they come up. So when anger comes up, if you, instead of just pushing it away and going, I don't want anger, I'm a bad person, I shouldn't be angry, my father was angry, this person was angry, I never want to be like them. You push it away. That negative response to this it's a natural emotion. We all experience anger. No, there's, this is just one of the basic, like the basic colors, the basic emotions we all have. It comes up and we let it be. We let it have its space and time, and then we let it go. So when we don't do that, when we have this, I don't like these emotions, I don't want these emotions, what happens is it leads to poor mental health. So they go on to say emotions themselves aren't particularly harmful things. It's actually the judgment that ultimately causes the suffering. And the Buddha knew this as well, that there was a sensation, there was this raw, clean, neutral perception, this thing that would come up in us, whether it was a pain or a thought or a feeling. It would just come up. We didn't choose it. It would just come up from moment to moment. This is reality as it is. But then that reacting part of the mind would place a judgment on it. And based on that judgment, a set of sensations and cascading thoughts and feelings would then follow on top of that. If you walk down the street and you see someone you don't like, there's this moment before you know it's that person. You just see a person there, and then all of a sudden the judgment, you recognize, oh, it's so-and-so, and you feel the judgment, and it shifts the chemistry in the body almost instantly. It's like, oh, there's this repulsion, this disliking. So I just want you to know the difference between that. When you're practicing, these emotions will arise, and if we can have a neutral or more positive, sure, positive works too, but if you can't be positive about them, just neutral, like there they are. These emotions serve a purpose. These emotions have a place in my existence. They help inform what is going on in my environment. There is an intelligence to emotions, negative emotions. I'll give you one example. Anger can help us stop certain behaviors, can help us set boundaries, or say that something isn't okay, can let us know that we're being attacked or hurt. Anger. Anxiety can give us a sense of worry that might be a real sense of anxiety, like I should be worried. There's a potential danger there. So these emotions have an intelligence. It's when they get out of control and they're lopsided and there's no balance to them that they become a mental health condition. So again, if we take one thing away from today's Dharma talk, it is when negative emotions arise, which they always will, there's no way to avoid them. Can you bring your practice, what you're learning here for your 30 minutes, can you bring that curiosity, that ability to just hold space? I like that. Hold space and allow those emotions to arise, do their thing, and then pass away without layering all this judgment on them. I don't want this. These aren't good. And because we're human, and that is our habit, when we do layer judgment on, how quickly can we pull ourselves out of that? How can we come out of that habit? Because based on this research and based on what we know from our own meditation practice, the more we get comfortable with just allowing negative emotions to come up when they need to, the quicker they will pass away and the sooner we will come out of a state of suffering. And that seems like a pretty good situation to me. Coming out of suffering sooner is what we're working towards. Insight meditation is about the end of suffering. That's how we do it. We observe our own suffering. We see the ways that we add suffering on top of pain. And we keep cutting back on that suffering by recognizing our own patterns, not as good or bad, but just practically. If I do X, then Y will occur. If I judge my negative emotions as bad, those emotions will continue to last longer, and I will continue to suffer longer. So by creating a new habit, the habit of sitting in meditation, observing and allowing, that brings the fire down. That puts it out eventually. And we can come back to being grounded and living naturally from moment to moment with whatever life throws at us. So I hope you'll take that into consideration and remember that emotion is just one form of perception that we're working with in insight meditation that creates a lot of happiness or suffering in our lives. And now the science is finding that you need to lean into these negative emotions as well, which I think is wonderful. I love it when these two worlds come together. So if there's no other questions, I'll be around for a couple of minutes and I'll answer whatever I can before we wrap things up for today. I know we went slightly over time. My apologies for that, but I get pretty excited about some of these topics. And like I said, you can look that article up online. It's very detailed, called Judging Emotions as Good or Bad. You'll find it. I don't think there's any other article called that. And it was also in the New York Times under Lean into Negative Emotions. So you can check those out. And yeah, we will see you next week, same time, same place. Also, if you haven't already, sign up for the Instagram and the MailChimp, because those are how we're going to be putting out the links as we move forward to sign up and stay connected for the online thing. So just make sure you're following us on Instagram or through MailChimp, and you can also go to our website. Eventually we're going to have the live stream going directly to our website. It's going to be connected on our Studio Live page on the website. It's not yet, but it will be there. And we'll start to have replays of the Dharma talks as well. If there's something that, you know, sparked for you and you want to come back to that concept, we're going to post those. You can find those right now on our YouTube channel. And that's where you're going to find all the long form video is on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, go to the YouTube channel, The Garuda Center. And yeah, we'll see you next week. So I'm going to just check here, see if there's anything for the chat, and then we'll call it a week. Let's see here, hold on a second. Okay, so there's a question here. So I'm going to answer this question here from one of the meditators. So the question is, please explain how to explore the physical sensations of various emotions while sitting? Do you identify various sensations in the belly, chest, head, etc., and break it down that way? Okay, so I'm just going to answer that. So again, remember, keep it simple. There's so much going on in your experience that it's very quickly you can get lost and overwhelmed, and probably that's part of where the question comes from. So keep it simple. So what I was saying in the instruction is there's going to usually be a predominant meditation object. So object of meditation. Object of meditation is just whatever is, most predominant. So it could be a sensation. You could feel the sensation most strongly. Let's say if anger is coming up, maybe you'll feel the sensation most strongly in your chest somewhere. Maybe anxiety, you're feeling butterflies kind of sensations in the stomach. So you don't have to cover all the territory. Like you said, an emotion, when it comes up, it could flood the whole body, not the physical body, and also the mind with thoughts. So just go wherever the dominant object is, where you're noticing it most strongly. So for me, if I'm working through something like anger, usually I'll go to either my breath or I'll go to somewhere in the chest and my hands. Like I'll feel the tension because I'll want to make a fist or squeeze my hands. So I'll just stay with that, and I'll just stay there, and then something else that might be stronger, like a thought, might pull me away, and then I'll come back. So you just keep moving around, but you don't do it with any kind of format. It's just whatever is pulling your awareness, okay? There's one thing to keep in mind, which is if you're experiencing a very intense sensation, it can become too intense for you to work with it directly. It's just too hard. Like you go into it and you just feel so agitated by it that you just want to get up and run. Okay, so that's good to know, is like you can work with your edge. And what I mean is go in, be with the sensations, be with the feelings, just see whatever you're noticing. But if it gets so overwhelming that you feel like you're going to explode, then move to a less intense area. So if I'm feeling a lot of intensity in my chest, I might go to the tips of my fingers with my awareness to take a break. I'm still in the present moment. I haven't left my body. I'm still grounded, but I'm just not in the eye of the storm. Actually, the eye of the storm I think is pretty peaceful, so that would be a good place to be. But I'm not at the center of the cyclone of emotion. So sometimes I'll go to the periphery. I'll move my awareness to my feet, my knees, wherever, I can feel still connected, but not overwhelmed. And sometimes coming back to the breath is another great way to get grounded. So yeah, there's no right or wrong way specifically to work with an emotion when it comes up. You can just let the awareness move around as it finds one thing more dominant in the field of awareness. It will shift around. And like I said, if it gets too overwhelming, come back to the peripheries or areas that aren't quite as intense, and then come back to the intensity. So you can this is where there is some choice making on your part, where you're just kind of like, this is where I am. I can work with this directly. No, I need to step back a bit and work with sensations that aren't quite as intense. So you can play with that a bit. But ultimately, the teaching is, if you're in the present moment, if you're in some part of the present moment with your awareness, that is going to give the space for you not to completely unconsciously suppress these emotions as they come up. They're going to bubble up and they're going to do their thing. And you might just be able to hang on to one piece of that big thing, but it's still happening and you're still aware of it on some level. You have not completely gone unconscious on it. And even if you're in the process of completely resisting that emotion, everything in you is holding back from it, notice that. Be aware of that resistance. Like I said, when I feel things I don't want, I start to become aware of the tension in my face, in my body. I feel that pulling back like you do when you feel pain. And I become aware of that, and then at some point I try and relax just a little bit into that unpleasantness. I just try and relax a little bit with those negative emotions that come up. And then I might tense up again. And then I'll breathe into that and relax. And that's, again, changing that habit of just running away. So it takes time, and you're not supposed to torture yourself and throw yourself in the deep end and drown. So just play with that edge. Find your edge work with these unpleasant emotions when they come up as best you can, and then pull back a bit and take a break and just come back to the breath. Maybe just the rising and falling of the belly can be a really grounding, simple thing that you can do as these things come up. Probably the most dangerous and problematic place to be is up here in your mind and just being cycling through all the narratives and thoughts. And I do that. I did that today. Something happened. I think someone called me and my phone went off, and right away I went to my head, and there was a lot of four-letter words, and I could feel the fire starting to build in my body. But then I started to notice that, and then I relaxed and I let go. I'm like, this is just how it is right now. This is what's happening. And I kind of just felt the sensations start to release because I wasn't adding more fuel to the fire with my thoughts. And it just kind of started to slowly slow down again. And then I was able to get into my body more and basically put out that fire. But just seeing that process in itself is where insight grows from. So hopefully that answers your question to some extent. And if it doesn't, you always feel free to have a follow-up question or try that out and then come back next week and see if there's anything else that we can bring to that. So I want to wrap it up there and thank everyone today for coming. And we'll be back again next week, like I said. So just pay attention to any of the notifications. You'll get notified about when it's starting, but it will be 10 o'clock next week, Friday morning. So until then, be well, take good care, and keep practicing. Bye.